We're back again for another installation of an F1 Manager 22 career episode, and this one is going to be action-packed as we've got a wet race coming up for the Japanese Grand Prix, and then two pretty challenging races at USA and Mexico. The last one, I think Mexico, we have a real good chance of doing well. Last season, we had one of the most absurd Mexican Grand Prix ever with those weird glitch crashes, but before those crashes, you may remember, we actually had some really good pace in this team, so I think we're looking forward to that one. And Japan as well, being a wet race, there's always opportunities in the wet to try and catch out the AI and score some points in this continued battle with Scuderia Ferrari. You know, only a couple of points in it. We keep on flip-flopping, gaining points and then losing points and then gaining them back again, so this might go all the way to the end of the season, to be honest. And so into Q3 for the Japanese GP, Gasly and Fernando Alonso, well, they would have locked out the second row in third and fourth, but after last episode, there are some rather worn components on the engine, ERS and gearbox side of things, so we're having to tactically take some penalties here and there to manage that and basically get to a point where at Abu Dhabi and also the second last race at Brazil, we have no penalties to take because I want to go into those final two races at the maximum, qualifying where we actually come on Saturday and not leave anything to chance and traffic management in our battle versus Ferrari. So taking that hit now, you can see at the moment adjusting the strategy because we've got rain for pretty much most of this race. About 4/5 of this Grand Prix is going to be at least an intermediate. There are a few spikes of heavy rain, so there might be some tricky periods where the temptation could be going to full wets, but I think we've got to try and see it out on intermediates. But initially in the first part of this race, it's going to be flat out racing on a set of dry tyres. We're going to choose the medium compound, and the plan is just to go full out attack, knowing that the rain's on the way, so we don't have to do any tyre saving. And because we're both taking penalties, Gasly and Alonso, we need to be at max attack, trying to get the most positions possible around this circuit. But that's going to be easier said than done. It is a very narrow and tight circuit, and I remember from last year's game was tricky sometimes to get the overtake done with you know, opportunities being a little bit fickle. But hopefully there's opportunities when the rain starts falling to jump some AI cars if they go a little bit late onto those tyres. But here we go to 5 red lights, and we're underway for this Japanese GP all the way down in P11 and 13, so a painful set of penalties to take. And ironically, we've still actually got some wear for Alonso on his gearbox, but that is because I took a new gearbox and then didn't use it on purpose because I want to try and just really grind and eke out all the performance we can, because I'm very focused on having the freshest components we have for Brazil and especially Abu Dhabi, because the way the pattern that this series has taken with the battle with Ferrari, it really is going to go all the way down to the end in the last race, I hope. And I hope, knock on wood, by the time we get to Abu Dhabi or even Brazil, that we're in a net positive and we have an advantage on Ferrari going into those races. But the first stint in this Grand Prix was difficult, lap 12, and the rain is going to start falling soon, and we've only climbed to P8 with Gasly, P11 with Alonso. Despite saying the fast lap of the Grand Prix, he's somehow been stuck in P11, so just showing in the dry, this circuit, it can be challenging to get your drivers past even slower cars, really, like Alpine, you know, McLaren are up there with Norris and Ricciardo, but now you can see over 1 millimeter of rain on the track, so it is time for intermediates. Some may stay out for one more lap. I don't know. I feel like some may just go straight to the full wets, because if you look at that rain chart, it is technically going to be time for full wets in about, you know, I don't know, 5 laps. But then there's a huge period of intermediate running. So in my mind, there's no point going on the full wets at all. You may as well just kind of take a little bit of pain when the rain gets a bit too heavy and try and survive that period, and then you'll be in a good place, because otherwise you're going to have to make a whole extra pit stop, basically. So we're in with Gasly and Alonso, the double stack for those two. So Alonso, unfortunately, will lose a bit of time in the pit lane with the double stack, but it's going to be negligible, because you can see there Alonso is actually just out the pit lane as Gasly gets back into turn 1. So he's really not lost that much time, both on the correct tyre. And you've got Leclerc, Perez, Russell, all those top fives on the soft still, and it's so wet now, and we'll definitely be looking to gain quite a few positions there, especially catching out like, Vettel and Bottas, and Gasly now up into P6, Alonso P9, so not a huge leap, but there's going to be 2 more free positions because McLaren have gone to full wet, so that'll be 2 more positions for Gasly and Alonso eventually. So a couple of laps later, lap 16, it's a mistake for Gasly. I wasn't even pushing him on these inters, and he's locked up, thankfully not gone into the wall, but he has lost a position there to Ricciardo. He was going to lose that anyway because they are on full wet, and by lap 19 in towards 20, you can see the McLarens are now 1-2, so they're taking, or just about 1-2 once Ricciardo finishes that move on Hamilton. So at the moment, they are the quickest cars on circuit. They're on the right tyre, but they're going to have to make another pit stop to go on to Inters, because this full wet period is already coming down now on the right-hand side on lap 20 there on the millimeters of water. And you can see here now we are starting to re-overtake these McLaren cars as they come into the pits for intermediate. So all of a sudden, 5 laps later from that lockup, Gasly's P5, Alonso in P7. Alonso's actually going quicker than Gasly at the moment, which is quite promising for him to catch up that time he lost with the double stack. We've now got a crash and yellow flags out. Don't know if that's going to be a safety car or not. We'll see. But Gasly having a go at Ocon. We're pushing both drivers hard because my plan is to make another pit stop onto intermediate for a second set to get to the end of the race. I don't know about the AI. They're clearly not pushing as hard as Gasly gets up into P4. So we've done this before where we've gone for the 2 sets of inters over the course of a Grand Prix rather than 1 set of intermediates, and we found really good pace because the inters, even though they do wear out less than dry tyres, you still do find that massive performance gain in the first 30% when they're fresh. So, and there's also more rain to come as well, with the last kind of 10 laps or so. So at the same time, I want fresher inters when that rain comes, because that will give our drivers a better, bet of making the most of that tricky period where it's a bit too wet for inters, but we're all staying on it. So lap 48 then, looking at who has done what in terms of the tyres, to my surprise, Verstappen and the likes of like Ocon and other drivers have actually pit for a second set of inters, so fair play to them. So that actually means they're kind of in line with us, but Verstappen looking mighty quick, so I think he's going to be a bit too quick for us to catch today. Hamilton staying out longer for maybe a late charge on a final set of inters. So as it stands, Gasly is in a podium, Alonso's P6, and now with 4 laps to go, just over 55% wear for both drivers, 49 for Gasly. I'm looking to bring this home, but the problem is Sainz behind us in the Ferrari. He was with Verstappen. He's now pit for a second set of inters and has overtaken us. Leclerc's pit, so thankfully that Ferrari, Leclerc, he's at the points at the moment, so there may be a chance that we only get 1 Ferrari scoring points as Ferrari make a mess of Leclerc's strategy. But Sainz is rapid and he may well catch Gasly, who is in second place, but he is on much worn inters. So essentially the AI actually duped me a little bit in this race because they are doing the same strategy as me, but they opted to go longer on the first set of inters to then really nail it in the second set, whereas I went attack initially, then tried to eke out the first set, and then I've kind of gone for aggression for most of the stint up until the final lap of the Grand Prix. Gasly is actually going to hold on to P2 just about, I think, and Alonso, well, he's ahead of Hamilton and a McLaren. Hamilton, though, he left it so late, later than anyone, to go onto that second set of inters. So he is probably the quickest man on circuit on this last lap. So he flies by us, but I'm hoping Alonso can maybe just hang on to P7 at the minimum, because Norris will probably overtake him. But up ahead, I was worried about Sainz, but actually he just left it a bit too late, and Gasly's actually doing quite well on pace despite being on conserve. So he is going to finish in second place. Verstappen in a world of his own, but that is a monumental position for Gasly, to be honest, considering where we started, how tricky overtaking was, and the fact also we did go a bit maybe over-aggressive on the tyre because I didn't know what the AI were going to do, but we managed to hold it through for P2. Verstappen wins this Grand Prix, but Gasly's podium is going to be a load of good points over Carlos Sainz. And then the fact that Alonso actually holds on to P6. He stays ahead of Lando Norris, which is massive for us because Leclerc scores 0. He's stuck behind Perez, didn't even catch him up in P11. So that's huge for us to get a couple of more points versus than what we would have in P7. So P2 and 6 from where we were at the start with the penalties. We've outscored Ferrari whilst taking those penalties, and Alonso had a worn gearbox the entire race, like 30% worn gearbox. So this has actually ended up being a really awesome race. Like, if you really chalk it up, this is as good as getting a double podium, to be honest, in terms of the circumstances involved. So Verstappen takes the win. Shock horror. I mean, he's just, definitely out to win the Drivers' Championship. Red Bull, probably the Constructors. But in our battle for best of the rest, P2 there in the Constructors, even for Gasly as an individual, maybe in the Drivers' Championship, that is a big result for him. But really what we're focused on is the team, and that is a good load of points on Ferrari. 26 to be exact to their 12 points. That's a good day in the office, and we pull ahead by 10 points now in the Constructors' Championship. But, you can see 10 points, that can easily swing the other way in the remaining races. So, which is why I'm concerned this will go to the end, and that's going to bring the tension quite high and get the nerves going in those last few races. But we have 2 more races to go in this video to keep this advantage. It's going to be difficult though. USA's up next. That is so tricky. I think USA is one of the most challenging races in this game because the AI are just so quick and yet don't wear out their tyres, even though USA is a very abrasive circuit. But because of that great job we did with the penalties at Japan, we are set to take none here at USA. So that will hopefully give us an advantage in the race, because as we simulate Q3, you're about to see a lot of drivers have penalties in terms of the drivers we're concerned with. Perez, Sainz and Leclerc, both Ferraris having penalties. That's massive for us, so we've got to take this opportunity. Gasly will be on the front row alongside Verstappen. Alonso will surely jump up to the second row then, with Sainz and Leclerc ahead of him with penalties. So this is kind of what I was hoping for, to set up a scenario where we don't have penalties here at USA, others do, and that's how we can maybe get at the front foot a little bit at what is a very difficult circuit around COTA. We're going to be trying to do a bog standard one stop, but we're going from mediums to hards rather than maybe softs to hards like a couple of other drivers, or they might involve the soft compound. I can see one of the Red Bulls is, but we go to 5 red lights and we are underway for the second race of this episode. The Mercs and Red Bulls have split their strategies with soft and medium. Both of us Audis though on the medium tyre, pushing hard at the moment, trying to get ahead of Max Verstappen, and Gasly does time and time again, showing that really on pure pace and merit our car is actually pretty damn quick. It's really just the tyre where that is an issue really, versus the AI and their kind of alien-like performance, even whilst they're not really pushing on the tyres. But if I can get Alonso ahead of Verstappen, I'm hoping we could try and control the pace and the race like we did at Singapore. Now it's not a street circuit, so we won't be able to completely dominate the race and try and hold everyone up and go at our pace, because USA, there are opportunities to overtake, but at least we can try and do something to defend Gasly with Alonso and just try and maybe control and negate the pace basically going through this Grand Prix. But Verstappen is proving to be a difficult customer to overtake. Alonso lap 4 here now, so quite a few laps. We're not really pushing anymore, but we are still pushing on the ERS to try and fiddle around with Alonso's pace and get him ahead, and he is now up into P2, so it's a 1-2 here in USA for Audi Sport. Now, can we go out there and control the race? Well, there's a safety car that comes out quite early on in this race because of a McLaren going wide. I don't really know why there's warranted a safety car exactly, but that is the incident we got shown. So the safety car, little bit of a spanner in the works in terms of Verstappen closes back up to us, as well as the whole grid. At the moment, Sainz is only up to P7. Leclerc's down in P17. So again, this could be huge for us. Like Japan, having Leclerc score no points, and he's even lost a position now to McLaren and Norris down there. Sainz, though, P6 could be a threat later on in this race. But we push on then, lap 13, going well, both not really pushing the tyres too much. You can see Gasly and Alonso swapping positions, but just keeping in the bay, not pushing the tyres too much. I tell Alonso to hold Verstappen back, and the second I do that, Alonso is headed for the wall. I watched this in real time, and it was so much pain. Wasn't pushing them, Fuel, we were pushing them, but pace-wise, I wasn't telling them to go attack. I was telling them just to stay at a good level. I was even telling Alonso to slow up, to hold out Verstappen, and the second I told him that, he locks up and goes straight in the wall, and it's a full-out DNF, not even just a crash of the front wing. He's out the Grand Prix. That brings out a second safety car. Now, again, ironically, a crash for one of our drivers might help the other one out, because we're now going to make a free pit stop onto a set of hard tyres. I believe the other drivers are maybe going on another set of medium tyres. So, funnily enough, this race, I'm actually the one doing a one-stop, and the AI are the ones trying a two-stop potentially here. Or at least that's maybe how it looks, because there is a long way to go in this race. So we'll see what the pace is like with Gasly, because the problem is if we are going to try and go to the end on these hards, he's going to be so slow. And now we've got all of a sudden Leclerc is in P4. So he's gained from that second safety car. So in one way, maybe it's helped out Gasly. In another, it's actually brought Leclerc back into play. Perez spins. He's been awful this season for Red Bull. Wouldn't be surprised if they get rid of him for the next season, basically, because he's been losing Red Bull so many points. But lap 31 then, 20-ish laps to go, and we are in third place. Leclerc's pit again. He's down to lap 11, P11, sorry. Verstappen and Sainz now are pitting as well. Sainz is about to pit. So now we're P1, and those guys have made a second stop. We cannot go to the end. I've looked at the tyres, and we can't even do it, even on conserve. So we do pit on that 39 to a set of medium tyres. At this stage now, Sainz is leading this race. So that's not great for us. I actually don't know where his pace has come from, because at one point he was down in P6, and Verstappen was with, us, with Gasly and Alonso at the sharp end. So Sainz had a blinder of a race. Leclerc is P4, but we overtake Magnussen, and we're going to overtake Leclerc on that 44. We're going to get past him, I hope, because there's going to be a bit of swapping there, but we do get Leclerc eventually, and we've got good pace to chase after Lewis Hamilton. So the goal right now is trying to limit the damage from Sainz and get a podium with Gasly as we fly by Leclerc, who's now on the hard tyres. So effectively, we've done a vice versa strategy compared to the AI. We went hards first, then we're ending on mediums. They're all ending on hard tyres, and that's going to give us the advantage on lap 51 to sail by Lewis Hamilton to get into third place. But the story really is, I know how Verstappen's done it because he's just so good in this game, but I don't know how on earth Sainz closed up to Verstappen and has suddenly found himself in the lead of this race, and he goes on to win the whole race. We have got very worn tyres by the end of the race, but Gasly is just going to hold on to P3 and get an excellent podium. He's been so consistent as of late in this series for us. Real points winner, breadwinner for us. And it's just a shame with Alonso's DNF, because for one, that could have got that DNF for Alonso brought out a safety car that got Leclerc back into the race. So it's not even just the points we lost with him, it's the fact that Ferrari gained an advantage by Alonso crashing. So Ferrari gained 35 points to R15. So all of a sudden, that 10-point advantage has gone down to a 10-point loss to Ferrari in the Constructors' Championship. So it really is yo-yoing really bad in a really mirrored way, like up and down the same amount. So all the work we did in Japan, undone in this race. I always knew it was going to be tough, though, so I was prepared to lose points at USA. But now, the final race of this episode, we go to Mexico, and I'm hoping we can come back at Ferrari and regain some of those points. In between these races, by the way, like I've been saying, I am doing constant upgrades to try and bring as many updates to this car for this season as possible to help our fight with Ferrari. We've been upgrading, pretty much every part on the car, basically, for straight line speed, low speed, brake cooling as well. I have improved because we've gone from about 74% to now looking at just getting to nearly 80% on brake cooling. So we are improving that to try and stop the lockups, but they still happen, in case in point with with Fernando Alonso. But I'm hoping Mexico can be a decent one. Let's see how we do in Q3. Top 10 shootout. Gasly P5, Alonso P6, but both Red Bulls and Ferraris have penalties. So again, the work we did in Japan to take those penalties then is going to help us, because all of a sudden Gasly is going to be on pole position, and Fernando Alonso, even though he's taking a penalty himself because from all the wearing he's been doing, crashing his car and such, he's still going to be in an okay position, I think, on this grid, because I think the others have more significant penalties. So the game plan is going to be a 2-stop, 2 sets of mediums either side of a set of hard tyres, again hoping that the mediums at the end of the race could give us an advantage to just nick those last positions, maybe even grab a race win if we're in P2 with Gasly, for example, and also with Fernando Alonso, hoping we can still do well because he is going to be starting in P6, so it's not too bad, to be honest, taking the penalty and somehow still ending up, in the top half there due to everyone else's penalty. But because he's a bit further back, I'm actually going to split the strategies and take some inspiration from the AI, and we're going to try a 1-stop with Alonso and see if he can gain track position and some more places that way, because he's going to be stuck behind some cars at this point. But let's go to 5 red lights, and we're underway for the final race in this episode, the Mexican GP. Gasly, the run to turn 1. The Ferrari actually has the advantage, but can Gasly come back at Leclerc? We're directly fighting the team that we are up against in the championship here in this race. Alonso's flying. He's up into P4, but immediately trying to control his pace because we know we have to try and eke out his medium tyres for the 1-stop. So I'm going to try my best. We have actually managed to get ahead of Sainz, so if Alonso can hold up Sainz on his 1-stop strategy and Gasly can stay ahead of Leclerc, well, that's, game, set, match. We're going to outscore both Ferraris with our respective drivers, so that will be quite ideal. Gasly pushing away over 1 second he's got now on Leclerc to try and break that DRS. We're still trying to get Alonso on the back of Leclerc to see if we can maybe even overtake him, and we may just do that on lap onto 8 this is, as Alonso has DRS and he's on the inside, and he is going to overtake Leclerc and make it a 1-2 for the team, all while not really even pushing his tyres too much. So for once, in a brief fleeting moment, we actually have the same sort of pace the AI do. We're not pushing on the tyres, and he's actually able to keep up and overtake cars. If it was like that every episode, we wouldn't have an issue, really, with our tyre wear. But obviously, we do have that issue, and reality comes back down to us, because only 3 laps later, lap 10, Alonso, all of a sudden, is back down to P4. So it was a fleeting moment, because eventually, yeah, the AI are just too powerful in those situations where you're not pushing on the tyres. So we even get overtaken by Verstappen. So we're just going backwards at this point. This is the pain that I'm trying to illustrate that we would always have. We were trying to go for these 1-stops with like Alonso. He's down to P4, maybe probably P5 soon enough, because Verstappen actually did get re-overtaken, but it's only a matter of time. But yellow flags in sector 1. Gasly still over 1 second to Leclerc, so doing very well in this first set of medium tyres. But Alonso sets the fast lap of the Grand Prix and yet gets overtaken. I don't actually understand how that works, but okay. I would assume Verstappen, there you go, Verstappen with a purple, so he eventually goes quicker. Lap 19 then, Gasly is on the edge of his stint in terms of the tyre wear and also the pace, because Leclerc and Sainz now are underneath him, and that's our cue to pit in. So we're going to pit from first place, go on to a set of hard tyres, and now push on those, because we are committing to the 2-stop with him. But with the, well, I don't really know what the Ferraris and Red Bulls are going to do. Alonso right now in a Red Bull sandwich, so I guess we'll just have to wait and see how that all plays out. But Gasly comes out in a fair bit of traffic, unfortunately, lap 13, but I'm hoping he's got enough raw pace to maybe make the most of it and get some overtakes done. If not, that might compromise our race versus the Ferraris. Alonso, meanwhile, just keeps on chugging along. He's up into P3 now, because both Red Bulls have now pit for their first pit stop, and it's just the 2 Ferraris and Alonso out there yet to pit in terms of the top 3 teams fighting. Sainz comes in now, so Leclerc probably will come in on the next lap. And we've done well with Alonso. 53% tyre wear, lap 26. I think that's pretty damn decent. And we're in the pit stop window. So Alonso has actually done quite well, to be honest, on this one stop so far. Keeping up, he's only 3 seconds back from Leclerc. So, there is some merit to the one stop. It's just very hard to see it when you're going long term, basically, in the race. Alonso now, lap 29, is coming in for that one and only pit stop onto hard tyres. Gasly's up to P4 now. So in all of this, we have actually lost out 3 positions because Sainz, Verstappen, Leclerc, they're all behind us, behind Gasly. And that's really down to that traffic. Unfortunately, Gasly did not just cut through them like a hot knife through butter, and so we've lost that ground. I'm hoping the medium compound at the end of the race, though, will allow us to gain that back and get them at the end of the race, but it's going to be tricky because lap 50, well, we've lost 11 seconds to Ferrari in that second stint, so they are just monsters this race, whether that's upgrades or what. But they're even quicker than Red Bull, it would seem, in this race. And to be fair, that might answer why Sainz was able to get the win at USA. Maybe they just brought a load of upgrades. So lap 55 then, the last third of this race. Gasly is in P6, trying to overtake Sergio Perez. Both of them trying to catch up to Alonso on that one stop. And it's Verstappen 14 seconds back from the 2 Ferraris. Ridiculous pace by Ferrari. And as Gasly catches up to Alonso once again, back-to-back races, we watch Alonso crash live in front of our eyes. He's taken out an Aston Martin this time for good measure. And that is Alonso. He's not out of the race, but he's got a damaged front wing. And I don't have another spare front wing for this because, well, I just didn't think we would need one. I thought it would be fine. In terms of money, we are quite tight on funds because I've been funneling in so much upgrading into this car. So Alonso's race is kind of dead and buried. I mean, to be honest, even if he pit and changed his front wing, he would have been outside the top 10, probably not getting any points today. So it doesn't really matter. To be honest, he may as well have retired. We may as well have retired him. But I thought I'd keep him out there just in case he could maybe hold up the Ferraris, because I end up pitting him like 2 times to try and get him a lap down to try and hold the Ferraris. This is how much I'm playing it tactically to try and beat these red cars. But whilst I've been talking about all that, under that safety car, again, advantage Gasly from his teammate crashing. We pit onto soft tyres, and now we have a very good chance of winning this entire race, funny enough, because the rest of them, I don't think they actually bothered to pit. So there's Alonso with no front wing, and even though visually he's got a front wing, let me tell you, he doesn't have a front wing, but visually he does. So he's now going to be a lap down. I'm hoping he can hold up the Ferraris when he gets a lap down. Meanwhile, for Gasly, he overtakes Leclerc up into P2 on lap 28. So we've got Perez, got Leclerc, and now it's all about Max Verstappen, one of the quickest guys, or the quickest guy here in this game and car combo. But we are flying on these softs, and eventually we will overtake Verstappen into turn 1, and in the background, that's Alonso a lap down. So I'm hoping he can maybe do anything, just a slight little hold up of those cars behind him, which are Perez, Leclerc, Hamilton, Sainz, just to try and maybe help Hamilton, maybe overtake Leclerc. That would be ideal for us, or, just a mistake, I don't know. But the last lap of the Grand Prix, it comes down to it. This is Alonso right now going slow, all the cars behind him, and maybe he slows them up just a bit. That little tiny glimpse there might just give Norris the run to overtake Sainz. So Vettel has even got ahead of Sainz. So Sainz has lost 2 positions maybe here if Norris gets him, and Hamilton is going to overtake Leclerc. The plan has worked. We have held up Ferrari enough. Hamilton, to be fair, was just quick enough anyway, away from us. So Gasly wins this Mexican GP. Leclerc pushed down to P5 in the dying stages. Sainz, unfortunately, did not get overtaken by Norris, but he was pretty damn close, but he finishes P7. So despite Alonso being fully out of this race, we've managed to win it with Gasly and get a bit of redemption there, and both Ferraris were faced with a bit of torrid luck and pace at the end there. So that is going to be a good result for us, just to bring it back a little bit to Ferrari, with obviously 25 points in the bag for Pierre Gasly, and it's going to be 16 in total for Ferrari. So we bring it back now down to 1 point. So going into the final 2 races, there is 1 point in it between ourselves at Audi and Ferrari for second place. That is going to set up a very tense last 2 ones, and we've done well there actually at Mexico to bring it back down to that, because I was a bit worried at the kind of midway point looking at Ferrari's pace when they were 1-2 ahead of Verstappen, but we've done it, and that's really great. So that sets up a fantastic last 2 races to end out this season. But guys, if you have enjoyed these 3 races in one episode, then be sure to hit that like button. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you're around here, then do get subscribed for weekly Formula 1 content. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.